Okay, folks, our next speaker today has grown up with sawdust in his blood, having worked around the forest product sector as a journalist for more than 25 years. He's currently the publisher of Pallet Enterprise, Timberline, and Pallet Profile magazines. He's reported on a wide variety of topics from automation and technology to human resources to best in class operational case studies to regulations and more. He's worked as a public relations professional for Freshman Hilliard and a business journalist for a few different publishing companies. He is known for bringing his straight talk, unique perspective on key industry trends and issues. At this time, please welcome Chaille Brindley.
Hi, Brad. Thanks for having me on the program for the Ohio Forestry Association. And I'm here to talk today about an issue that no matter who I'm chatting with, whether it's mainly in my background, it's probably a pallet company or a sawmill, but occasionally loggers as well. The number one issue I'm hearing from folks, it isn't lumber all the time, although what's going on in the lumber market has been crazy this past year. But a lot of times it's labor. And increasingly people are telling me, man, if I could make so much more money, we could be so much more productive if I could just fix this labor problem. And so that's what I wanted to talk about today. And as I've been thinking about it, because I've been writing a lot about this in Pallet Enterprise, this is one of the things we write about. Matter of fact, if you're having a labor problem, even if you're not a pallet company, I want to encourage everybody to go take a look at Pallet Enterprise, look at our website, get on our email newsletter, and you'll find out a lot of really good labor articles we try to put in there. Matter of fact, the way we got connected, I think, Brad, was because we had just written something about millennials, and that had caught your attention. So millennials in the workplace. So, but as I've looked at this issue, I think more than just a labor problem, the root cause is that we have an image problem in the forest products industry. Now, for some of you, you're like, I already knew this, but let me kind of explain how this impacts the labor picture a little bit. First of all, I think when a lot of people think of the forest products industry, the guy there on the top right on my screen, as top left for you guys would be Shelby Stenga, who's the swamp logger. Now, okay, anybody who wakes up and goes and fights alligators for wood, got to take my hat off to that guy. But most people who work in the forest products industry, their job is nowhere near as harrowing or dangerous as that. And then the other thing is, to be honest, is that a lot of that stuff, whether it's axemen or swamp loggers, is dramatized for TV. So first of all, that's one thing that people think of. Another thing people think of is you see that old saw blade there and kind of old sawmill. They think, this industry's just got antiquated technology. And you know what? That's not true. Matter of fact, you go in a lot of sawmills now, and it is a modern, processing plant. And then one of the things that come out of there is, heck, even in the pallet industry, the area that I really work the closest with, you're starting to see robotics. I mean, there are now robots that will dismantle pallets. If you had told me that 10, 15 years ago, I would have said that was something from the Jetsons, cartoons or something. Like, it's pretty amazing what's out there. One of the other things is people talk about is, well, it's just bad for the environment. That's a bottom picture where all the trees are cut down and there's this ominous sky. And no. I'll never forget the first time I ever met Patrick Moore, who was a former Greenpeace founder who kind of turned over a new leaf, so to speak, became a very big advocate for the forest products industry. And his tagline was "Trees are the answer." And I think that's so true, that in a world where everything has to be made of something, the sustainable argument for the forest products industry has never been more important, particularly when you even look at issues like climate change. So as I see all that, I see that, yes, the forest products industry has a huge role to play in some of these important social issues that are a driver for millennials and Gen Z and people like that. Last one down there, you see a guy there and next to a tree. And yes, particularly the logging sector can be very dangerous, but the safety records have been improving. And as long as you're smart in how you do things and you've got good safety programs, what a lot of people think of as being a safe workplace. If you had asked someone a couple of years ago, is being a doctor or being a nurse a safe workplace, they probably said, yeah. After COVID and people were dying of COVID after treating COVID patients, all of that kind of concept is kind of fluid and changed. So, I think we have an image problem, but it's not one that we can't address. And as I was doing some research, I came across this video from a large Canadian company. And I just think there's some things that are in this video that are really good and hopefully will be I hope you just watch. And what are the messages that come out as you're watching this video?
Being a woman in trades, you feel a little bit of pressure, so they've been really accepting.
Starting at the mill as an operator got me into the mechanical side, and I am a millwright apprentice currently.
The people are more like family than co-workers.
You'll learn a lot. It's a nice place to work.
I've never worked in a mill before, and I took a risk just to feel it out, and I love it. It's great.
So, one of the things that stands out to me about that video is, first of all, it starts with a woman, right? And I was in Italy, and I noticed that some of the very successful Italian pallet companies, they had women that worked actually in the production aspect of their business. I pulled aside the CEOs and kind of asked them about that. I said, look, so we're looking for people who have skill sets no matter where they're at. And some jobs, women are just tend to be better at. Matter of fact, in one of the most recent stories in Pallet Enterprise magazine, I'm interviewing the CEO of a large pallet company in Chicago, and the president of the company, it's a woman, and she's doing a really great job. So, destroying those gender stereotypes, showing that previously would just ignore this possible job, might want to consider it. She seemed happy. She had never had any experience before. It didn't matter. And that's to really enjoy what she was doing. That's something that, everybody, we spend so much time at work. We want to enjoy it. And you also saw that a lot of people, they were entry level. They didn't have a lot of experience. There was opportunity for them to grow, for them to learn new skills. The one gentleman who was there at the screen said, you learn a lot. He also seemed to be from a minority background as well. So, trying to appeal to a larger, different group of potential employees. There is opportunity for advancement, which is really important for the younger generations. They want to feel like they've got to be around 15 years before they can actually get, a bump up the ladder, so to speak. A couple other things that were there was talk about training. We saw the fact that you saw the automated machinery, and it just looked like a decent place to work. So I don't know if you've thought about this, from everything from the job postings you put out there to videos to what's on your website. You're thinking about how potential employees were going to look at what it's like to work for you. And that's something a lot of times we're thinking about our customers when we do our websites. We're maybe our internal staff, but we're not always thinking about attracting new hires. They're probably going to go take a look at your website, I would think. One of the things that I want to look at here are the numbers. Log worker force is declining at an accelerating rate. Loggers, the average median age is very old. Bureau of Labor Statistics estimates that the industry will be short some 7,000 loggers by 2026. And let's face it, if we don't have loggers, and the rest of the supply chain stops in the forest products industry, that's an issue that we have to address. I'm even aware now that there are pallet companies that have their own logging crews. This has been something that's happened, in the past before, but I'm even talking to pallet recyclers that have bought sawmills that have their own logging crews. So they're seeing their need to really address the full supply chain. And that's something I think you need to be aware of. Also, sawmills tend to be located in smaller towns and wood processing facilities. So you're not always just talking about, attracting people to your business. You may need to be working with your local chamber of commerce and things to attract people to your town, because a lot of those towns are thought to be dying, and you want to get an image out there that there are jobs, good jobs to be had, and it's a great place to live. So that's one of the things for you to be thinking about. Do people even want to come live in your town? Training for the sector. It is true that they're out there. I've covered a lot of them, but it's not as easy as going down to your local community college for a lot of people. And so I think working to accelerate training so people can get in the industry is a really, really important step to solving the labor problem. And if you looked at that, there's some stuff later in the program. There's a company in the Midwest that's a pallet company that's even developed their own high school. They call it high school. It's kind of interesting. So I'll refer to that later. Also with the numbers, people want to be paid well. And while, working in the forest products industry may not be the same as working for Microsoft or Google, okay, for most people, still a lot of times we've had to pay competitive wages to get people through the door. So it's not an industry that is necessarily the lowest payer, but with McDonald's starting to pay in a lot of areas anywhere between $12 to $15 an hour, we're going to have to build into our product higher pay scales. So that's something we have to be thinking about and positioning for the future. This is data you'll see regarding the top one is for loggers and the bottom one is for people that are more on the sawmill processing side. The rates are fairly competitive. In most areas, it's well above minimum wage to attract people. Hourly wage schedule, we publish every certain number of years for the pallet sector a labor survey. If you want to get information on that, contact me in email later. And one of the things that we noticed was that wages have been rising steadily from the last time we did the survey in 2016 to 2020. The beginning labor rate of the pallet sector that we surveyed rose 18.6%. And so it was rising before then, but the rate of acceleration is really growing. And we're starting to see inflation in a lot of areas. And one of those places is definitely pay scales. Beyond just minimum wage laws, just to get people through the door, people were having to pay a lot higher wages. So, how do you attract good workers? Also from our labor survey, we were asking for best practices and what are the recruiting techniques that seem to work. The top one always is asking existing employees because they're going to be your best advocates for people want to know, is this a good place to work? And, as those people are able to go out, you give recruitment bonuses and things like that. It can really be helpful to start attracting people who wouldn't normally come to work for you. One thing we did notice is that number 2 there was that post jobs online. Online job postings were rising while temp services falling in effectiveness. So you're seeing tools like Indeed.com or Jazz HR or other ones that are out there, whether they're full software packages or they're just job boards. People are looking online, they're posting online. You need to have an online presence and be thinking about that image as you're looking at your recruitment practices. Some of the other things that are there, running ads, working with sheltered workshops or prisons. That's been very common for pallet companies to do that. And it's been effective. It does create a whole nother level of challenge. Some are working with job placement services or church or charities. There is a big focus for a lot of these guys on improving their website to actually think about HR and think about prospecting. And then there's also areas of town where day workers may congregate, and those people can become really good workers for your business. Also part of our labor survey is how are people improving morale? Now, keep in mind that this is before COVID, but people want to have a sense of community at work. So number one for a lot of these pallet companies was a concept of just having lunches, parties, events, doing things, whether it's a softball team, I don't know, whatever it is, to create a sense of camaraderie where people are part of a team. The millennials, we'll see later as you look at the values millennials have, they want to be part of a team. And so I think that's a big, important key aspect. The other one that's really important, we talk about this more later as well, is onboarding and training. A a lot of people's onboarding is showing them a really boring video, having them sign their HR paperwork, and have them follow someone around for a day. If that's your idea of onboarding, you really need to up your game. And I'm going to kind of talk a little bit later about how you can do that. Also develop more training for managers and supervisors. You know, sometimes these people who are managers, supervisors, they're great people, but they've never been trained about how to lead other people. And they just been there longer than anyone else. So what happens is they get promoted and they do know things, but they may not always know how to get the best out of their people. And if you're not training them well in that, you're definitely going to be losing some productivity, and you're going to be losing some workers too. And one of the ways people find out, okay, what do my employees honestly think, is they'll conduct number 5 on our list, employee engagement surveys. That's the first, I first encountered that when I was interviewing a guy who did a lot of work training for Chick-fil-A, which is not an ad for Chick-fil-A, but if you've ever been there, you know, man, if we could get them to help our country know how to run our country better, they run a drive-through so great, it's amazing. And a lot of that for Chick-fil-A comes down to employee engagement and always looking to see what's happening with their management level people, and are those people engaging enough people to really make the business run effectively. Also, you'll see on that list things like using more social media, you know, providing life skills. A bunch of pallet companies become really well known for helping their employees with a lot of things outside of work. And people not only came there, but stayed there because, you know, they helped them learn language skills. They helped them learn other skills to be able to navigate what it's like to live in the United States, because sometimes these people were immigrants, a lot of them, or maybe they were second chance employees or whatever, or just people who, you know, had never thought about doing a budget. So one of the other ideas I really liked is that some of these pallet companies, to help deal with a lot of the issues that were coming up, they developed their own caring and employee emergency programs that were led by and partially resourced funding by employees. Yes, the owners put money into it too, but it's so amazing when their fellow employees would give a little bit just to show, hey, we really care. So those are, and there's some more ideas down there too, like developing a chaplains program. I know those are really important. And I think I may talk more about that later. With the chaplaincy programs, they actually hire chaplains to come in and to provide what I would call, you know, personal, moral, emotional care for workers. Now, a lot of people go, hey, I'm not a Christian company, I can't do that, or I'm worried about, you know, church-state separation. It's not illegal to care for people, right? So you can hire chaplains, and a lot of these programs, they understand that they've got to walk a fine line and how to do that. But then, you know, so many employees don't have anyone to turn to when they have a psychological issue, no one to visit their sick child in the hospital when they get a horrible diagnosis by a child or a spouse. You just think about that, and what type of commitment does that show from the company? And then sometimes these companies will also do a lot of work with local nonprofits. I'll never forget, I was working one time at a local food bank, and in came all the management staff from a local fast food chicken chain. And their idea was, hey, we want our people to be good teamworks. We want them to give back to the community. So we want them to be involved. We're actually paying them today to come in to volunteer. And wow, that just spoke a lot to me. And by the way, Zaxby's has pretty good chicken too. So anyway, looking at generational differences that exist. Millennials, roughly 20 to 40-year-olds are millennials. I never forget, not too long ago, I was hanging out with a friend of mine who owns a plumbing supply company. And he was talking all this bad stuff about millennials and how they don't do this and don't do that. And then he and I went to some training thing together. And then he discovered, because he's 40 years old, that he's a millennial. You just should have seen his face. So a lot of times we have these assumptions, and we don't even always know everything about what's going on behind these assumptions. A couple of things that we've written about recently has been millennials. Matter of fact, that's one of the reasons why Brad approached me to come and talk today. Millennials tend to job hop more, honestly, than do a lot of the other generations, particularly somebody that was maybe a boomer or older. But they can be loyal if they feel like they're properly being managed. They like to work in meaningful work. They want to know why they're doing what they're doing. They also love to work in teams. Even when they were growing up in school, they were doing projects as teams, and they want to be heard. Now, that doesn't mean that you're going to necessarily do everything they want, but they just want a seat at the table. And if you give them a little opportunity to innovate or own an area, you might be surprised what they would do. Also, these are the kind of people that are going to, when it comes to looking for a job, they're going to look online, they're going to research you, and your visible face to the world on social media and your websites and videos and everything else is critically important. This is not just for big companies like Resolute either. This is even for small companies, and you don't have to go out and hire a fancy firm to do it. All you need is some honest people on a camera, and you can put up, stuff that would probably do the trick. You also need to be open to working across racial and gender lines, because anyone who's in the millennial generation, that's going to be something they're going to be open to and maybe even looking for. They want a clear career path, an opportunity to grow. I think that's the number one thing most of these young folks are looking for. And they want desired training and more frequent feedback than previous generations. The good news is not all millennials look at blue collar jobs as a dead end, which is really, really good. As I'm talking, I do want to highlight some of the experiences I've seen from pallet companies that are doing some really cool things. And some of these are sawmill companies too. One of the most foremost leaders, I think, in the pallet industry when it comes to this is James Reuter with L&R Pallet in Denver. He's done a number of different things through the years to recruit people. He told me about 10 years or so ago, they even considered shutting down their doors because they didn't know if they could continue to get the people they needed. So they quickly made a transition and discovered this Burmese refugee community there in Denver that they were able to befriend and help, and then vice versa. Those people became some of their best employees. I can't tell you this was easy. He basically admitted that, it was a big discovery for them, 3 months into this project, when they discover that they thought everyone that they were hiring spoke the same language, but there were 5 different dialects. So it does create issues. But one of the things they found is they were able to tap into these communities. They would bring more people. And next thing you know, it helped solve some of their labor issues. Now, I wish I could tell you that fixed it forever, but it didn't, because over time, property values skyrocketed in Denver, and the Burmese folks tended to move other places. So then they had to find other populations. They worked with second chance folks and those who had been incarcerated or had problems with other job segments. They provided a lot of training and life skills and these other things that brought a whole new group of people in. But as they were loyal to them, those people became loyal to them. So I think it's important that we've got to realize that labor is a moving target. It's a constant battle. But if you're willing to really work at it, you can find workers. It's just not as easy as it used to be. Sadly, that's definitely the case. Another company that's done a lot of really cool things is Pallet Service Corp, which is in the upper Midwest. And they were seeing that they were having so many people going out that revolving back door because people would come in and their onboarding process was one of the words I guess my nephew might say is it was jacked. It needed some improvement. And so they did a thorough analysis. They discovered a number of things. They changed when they were doing their tours so that the tours were one of the first things that they were doing. If people didn't want to, do that kind of job, they wouldn't last past the tour. One of the other things they did, they radically changed their onboarding process to have customized experiences for each major type of position. Because what they had previously had was a one-size-fits-all deal. And then that didn't work because every job is different. How every job is going to be measured is different. The opportunities to grow in the company may be different. And so by having these customized experiences for those who were coming in for onboarding and training, it really helped out a lot. They also streamlined their paperwork. They involved it with a lot of online forms and things that could even be done on smartphones. And here's another key, important thing they did. They set clear goals for all workers from the first day they were on the job. So this wasn't something that someone was working there 2 or 3 months before they even know how they were being measured and how they're going to be rewarded and how they could grow up the company. This was something they were learning from day one. And the other thing they said is a lot of the younger folks that came in, anyone who was kind of millennial and younger specifically, they wanted a lot more immediate feedback. So they started redoing their review process where they would have not only instant feedback as they're training them, but even 30 and 60 and 90-day reviews for new hires. So I don't know, when you have a new hire for your company,
What kind of feedback are they getting? What type of review process do you have? Do they really know how you're going to measure and reward them? Because if not, it's going to be hard for them to measure up. One of the other big things that I've discovered as I've been working with companies is this concept of employee engagement surveys. I was at a conference one time where people from Chick-fil-A were there, and I don't know if you've ever gone through a Chick-fil-A line, but I think those people should maybe run our country. I mean, it's amazing. And one of the big reasons they're so good at this is that they have a lot of focus on employee training and employee engagement to understand, does the employee get it? Can we help them figure out how to be successful here? Do they understand what drives our business? And so that's something that I heard about. And then I started talking to my friend Hal Wallace of Pallet one of the largest pallet companies on this. They have a whole program that's based around employee engagement, having surveys. They've got really high response rates. One of the reasons why they tie that in with their HR paperwork, it's something they really push. And it's an opportunity for employees to speak back. It's anonymous, but the results are made public, and management can get to understand, how are we doing as a company? What really is our culture? We may think our culture is one thing, but it may be something completely different. There may be key areas we've missed, and those surveys help identify that. One of the companies I talked to about this was Millwood. They're one of the largest pallet companies in the country. They have 26 locations and 1,600 team members. They use an online tool called Amplify to monitor perceptions of their culture. And I'll never forget when I talked to Frank Hyatt, who's their executive chaplain and their HR director, which I think is funny that the HR director is a chaplain. I think that's just kind of shows you where their culture focus is. But he told me, man, our senior management, middle level management, they were getting really nervous because as those surveys started to come in, they thought they were doing a lot better than they really were. But what happened is these people really wanted to do better. And some of these leaders are getting burnt out. They weren't in the right positions. It really helped identify ways to improve. These were done via smartphones. It was both in English and in Spanish. And because of a big PR effort within their company, they were able to get about 75% of their workers to participate. When it comes to employee engagement, I love this graphic from Deloitte because it talks about what are people looking for, particularly millennials and younger folks as are coming up. What are the ways they're measuring employers? People want meaningful work, and it means different things to different people, but some may want autonomy. They want more time for Slack. They want more smaller empowered teams. They want hands-on management, not management that comes and talks to them once a year. They want coaching and clear and transparent goals. If you don't keep it simple and you don't help them understand what their goals are, they're not going to deliver on it. That third point, positive work environment. They want to be encouraged. They need to have recognition, and people need to be treated as not a number, but as a person. And companies that get that, they're going to probably have a lot more employees staying around than those that don't. Growth opportunity is another big one. People really want to know that they have an opportunity to kind of have self-directed dynamic learning, and they also want training on the job. And this is another big kicker. They want to trust their leadership. It needs to be open, transparent, inspirational, and focused on the mission and purpose of the company. And if your people aren't doing that and your leadership isn't doing that, then shame on you. So, because there is opportunity out there. I want to highlight a few people that were doing something really unique. One of these companies was Henry Poor, that does pallets and lumber and all sorts of stuff in Indiana. They actually came up with something really unique. It was a pallet high school of all things. We covered this in 2019 in Pallet Enterprise magazine. And it's pretty cool. It's a work study program for at-risk high school students where they work part-time, and then another part-time, they come in and they are trained, and they do, schoolwork and that kind of stuff. This was a pretty innovative program. It became a win-win situation. The students were running their resaw operation. It was a little bit of a problem scheduling a little bit, but they were able to finally work that out. And they even had opportunity for people to work that were under 16, stacking lumber and doing things that wasn't involved with machinery. So that was a very successful program and pretty unique. And it helped these at-risk students and also help them. It's funny how these at-risk students knew other people who might eventually come to work for them. It just was kind of a very unique thing. Another company did something really cool I liked was Pallet One. They came up with an apprenticeship program to really develop leaders from young people within their plants. I met these guys in North Carolina. I was doing a story on them, and it was just really cool. They worked with Granville Community College. Pallet One paid the cost of this program to help train these people in basic skills on things like hydraulics, pneumatics, basic electrical stuff, introduction to PLCs, maintenance, and also HR and, business management skills. These are some of the young guys they're hoping are going to be their future shift supervisors, plant managers, and all that. And so far, they've been very happy with the program. I want to move it to other parts of their network. So why do people stay? According to this business survey, the number one reason that people stay in small businesses is because of the manager and employee relationships. That's the top factor. Then comes company culture, and then comes employee benefits. Yes, people want to be paid well, but at the end of the day, it's more important that they're around their coworkers and their managers, probably more than their children and their spouse. So if that's the case, they want to make sure they're in a good work environment. And I think forest products companies can do it. I've seen pallet companies become hugely successful. And one of the things, the picture right there is of Hal Wallace, my friend there on the left-hand side. And he told me that his goal is to be the #1 blue collar employer in every area where he's got a plant. Now, I don't know if you thought about it. What is your HR goals? If it's not something like that, you might want to rethink that. Now, I'm not saying that they actually always do it, but at least they're striving for it. And here's the deal. It's costing you money with this retention issue, whether or not you realize it or not. There's $1 trillion lost, according to Gallup, by U.S. businesses every year due to voluntary turnover. And here's the kicker. Most of that damage is self-inflicted. If we improve our company cultures and particularly work on management, we're able to turn some of those numbers around. And that's the way you're going to be successful. So why do people quit? Great question. I think people quit for a variety of different reasons. But here's a list that I really, really like. So the top one is career development. This was from Work Institute study. And people don't feel like they have an opportunity to advance, to have job security, to grow in a company. They're going to be looking for the door almost as soon as they walk through your door. And I think we have to really be thinking of that as people are coming in, because they're thinking about that. One of the other big things is travel and schedule conflicts. The people who come to work for you, they have a life outside of your business, and you need to recognize that and help them be successful in that. The other thing is manager behavior. If you have bad managers, it's not going to be long before retention is going to become a problem. And sometimes the best thing you can do, and I hate to say this, is if you have a bad manager and you've worked with them and you've worked with them and you've worked with them, sometimes you have to let them go and find somebody who will manage better. Relocation is a big issue for why a lot of people move, because their spouse gets a job somewhere and they just can't stay at the company. You can't do a whole lot about that. Compensation benefits. Notice that's number 5 on the list. Yes, people want rewards economically, but they also really want to be in the right culture and the right place and the right company. Other things on that list are things like retirement, work environment, job characteristics, those kinds of things. So be aware of that. Now, I want to not just talk with you. I want you to interact with me. Because I can just sit here and kind of spout off stuff, what I'm seeing, people who are doing really great things. But I want to give you an opportunity to actually be part of the conversation. And hopefully with these questions, this will get you to kind of look at, okay, what do we need to work on? What are the areas we need to improve on our website, on our social media, on our messaging, on how we're doing onboarding and things like maybe an employee engagement surveys, things like that. Here's how you can participate. You can either click on the link that's there, and there will be questions that you can, and I'll also put that link in the chat window as well. There's a link there on the screen, or you can open up your smartphone and go to the following domain name, www.menti.com. www.menti.com. ENTI.com. It's going to ask for a code. Use the code 9742352. That code again, 9742352. The first question you're going to see really has multiple answers that you can fill out. And as you look at those, it's asking you kind of about which of those social media and online resources are you using. Go ahead and start to answer that. Your survey is anonymous, but it is going to show the aggregate results for everyone in real time as we have this conversation. So I've got to do a couple things to bring that up here real fast. Give me a second. Hi, Brad. Can you let me know, are people able to see the Minty results?
I'm not seeing them at this point, Chaille.
Okay, I may have to back out of this presentation here for a second.
And for those that the link on the screen didn't work, but it is out there in the chat box under online survey for HR presentation. If you click on that link that's in the chat box, it'll take you right to what Chaille's talking about there, and you can start answering the survey.
Okay, yeah, I'm going to need to, it looks like sometimes I'm going to need to probably stop sharing the screen and reshare. So give me a second. Trying to figure out how to get this to work. I apologizing. The best laid plans.
And we're still not seeing the results.
Yeah, give me 1 second here. I'm apologizing. Oh, here we go. Is it coming through now?
Yes, it is.
Awesome. Okay. So if you go to minty.com, it'll show those results. One of the first things we see, and you can put in multiple different answers here. It's not just one thing. So that online discussion postings on boards such as Facebook or Craigslist, that's very common. Those are free opportunities. Probably in the communities where you're at, there are probably free job boards on Facebook and Craigslist and other places. Some require you to pay. There are paid services like Indeed and Monster and all that kind of stuff. So those are definitely some options that are out there. Having a LinkedIn company page profile, very important. It doesn't cost you anything. It just takes some time. People are going to go take a look at that. Now, your entry-level positions and your jobs for people that are maybe working the line, they may not be going to look, but anybody who's in sales, anybody who's in management, anybody who's kind of beyond entry level, and even entry level people may be using LinkedIn as a way to look for new opportunities. Also, if you do not have web-enabled forms or applications online, you haven't really thought about having a career section on your website. This is not just for big companies. You can task someone in your company, in your HR department who works with this to try to be able to help focus on this. And it should be important. And it should be one of the first things you do. I would say that's one of the first things. If you don't have a career section of your website, somebody who's in management or in HR or something, this needs to get on their radar screen, I would say pretty much right away. Before I go on to the next question, I want to give anybody else an opportunity who wants to participate. The last one on there was online advertising targeted. That's things like Google keywords and that kind of stuff. You could do that, but I think there's enough free resources and other things out there But I would try those first, to be honest, because you can spend a lot of money on paid advertising on Google and Facebook and that kind of stuff before you know it. Okay, so I'm going to go on to the next question. Let's see here. Give me a second. Sorry.
I think you were on the right track down there in the lower left.
There we go. Are people seeing it now?
Yes.
Okay. Second question. What's your public career recruiting message? For some of you, you don't have one. So it's the last one. Help. I just need people, right? I mean, that's really, for some of you. So if you don't have one, then that's the one you probably would select. That's okay if you're honest and that's where you're at, but you need to really rethink that. For some people, it's competitive pay and benefits. For others, it's flexible hours and shifts, particularly for younger folks. They really want to have some control over their schedule. And there's only so much they may want to work. Opportunity for advancement, that's a big one. On-the-job training, hugely critical. Those two go together. Do you have a friendly work environment? Do people smile? If you have a career video or you have a career page and everyone's frowning, you need to go shoot a new picture, right? It's just that simple. You also want to have a good place to live and raise a family. You may need to not only be recruiting people to your business, but you may also need to be recruiting people to your city, to where you live, that kind of stuff. I've been on some websites where people not only have information about their company, but they have information on why you might want to live and move here. It's not a bad idea. Also, environmental stewardship, community impact messaging. Young people want to know that they're working for a good company. And I think for a lot of different companies that are out there, you're going to find that, working in the forest products industry, it is a green business. We need to be telling people that. We don't need to be letting competition define us in ways that isn't true. And that's a real concern that's out there. So number one seems to be competitive pay. I get that. I also think we need to be looking at some of these other things that are on this list, whether it's training, career advancement, friendly work environment, flexible hours and shifts, positive community impact messaging, that kind of stuff. Third question I have here is, how can your onboarding program be better? The friends of mine at Pallet Service Corp, they thought they were doing a good job till they went and really evaluated it. And one of the things they discovered is turnover let them know that they could have done a better job. So one of the ways you might want to be changing is you want to clarify expectations up front. You can select multiple choices of these, by the way, not just one. You may also want to change order of how you currently do things. So if you do all the paperwork first and then you take them through and show them the plant, it's probably better to swap all that up. However you can. You obviously may need to do certain paperwork before you even let them on the facility according to insurance. But in general, you don't want to have them go through this whole long, lengthy process before you show them where they might be working. And then they go, I won't do that. You just spend a lot of time and that person's not going to work there. Streamline paperwork and have that be online and have that be available, accessible that way is important, and in multiple languages. If you have different people from different communities, they speak different languages, you really need to have the paperwork in their language. Some companies, I know one pallet company, they were using personality assessments to kind of help fit employees in the right place. This was a Canadian company. And I asked the guy, why did he do it? He goes, they do it in the NFL. And he actually uses the same Wonderlic test they use in the NFL. I don't know how effective it is, but he claimed that it helped him kind of really just get a better sense for the people's learning styles, how they think, and would they fit in this part of their company or not. And this wasn't just for management. This was also for people who are coming in just to work in the plant. And then for you, you may look at, say, another one of those things is what I really need to work on. So those are some of the things that we've looked at. Now, I hope that those questions were helpful for you in trying to figure out, what you might need to work on. Because at the end of the day, we all probably have some things that we really need to work on to actually improve. The last thing that I want to show you here is my contact information. So Pallet Enterprise, we cover a lot of HR topics, and it's not just for pallet companies. It's for sawmills, anybody who's wood processor. You can take these same things. We've covered employee engagement surveys. We've covered things like recruiting, what your LinkedIn page should be like, personality assessments. We've covered things like questions to ask when you're trying to recruit for a good salesperson. Actually, that article I thought that this consultant helped us with was pretty good. And even the most recent one that we had regarding millennial generation and Gen Z, what are they looking for? To that regard, if you'd like to subscribe to the Pallet Enterprise digital publication for free, go to our website. It's www.palletenterprise.com. There's a blank on the front page that says sign up for a digital edition. Fill that in, just put in your email address. We'll add you. It's no cost. You can also call our office and ask for it. You may be thinking, how do I know if my business is millennial and Gen Z friendly? Well, there's a quiz for that. And we've got a quiz that we worked with an HR consultant on that we'll send you for free. All I'm going to ask you to do, and that's my cell phone number. You got a question, send me a text. I'll respond as best as I can. But basically send me a text that has your name and your email, and then just write quiz in it. And I will make sure to send you a copy of that HR quiz assessment to kind of understand. It's pretty quick and easy to do too. Am I millennial and Gen Z friendly in my business, or am I not? Because increasingly, those are the people you're going to be recruiting. Doesn't matter what background they are, whether or not they're from a local background or they're an immigrant. There's a lot of things within those generations that are very similar in how they look at the world. The last thing, I have to fill about 80 pages a month for a magazine. I'm always looking for topics. And I enjoy topics that stretch me and that really are almost what I would say consultant level work. So if you've got questions in HR and how you can improve these kind of things, I'm sure other people on this webinar do too. And we'd love to write stories about it. So you've got my email address there. Send me some questions, send me some stuff. I'll keep that confidential. I might call you to ask for some feedback, but in the end, we'll probably write a story about it, and we'll be your research department for you. And you know what? I won't charge anything for it. So, those are all three free resources that may be helpful as you're looking at your particular HR situation. So that's pretty much what I have to share today. I think for your time, if you're not really thinking about your website, you're not really thinking about your public image, and you're not thinking about the different generations that you're trying to reach, that needs to be on somebody's radar screen there in your management pretty quickly. So with that, I'm going to stop talking. And Brad,
Chaille, yeah, thank you so much. I think that was a very good presentation. I think you definitely enlightened us to a lot of things that people need to consider when they're hiring, training, and trying to retain folks. Really appreciate that. We do have time to take a couple questions if anybody has any that they've been itching to ask here. I'm not seeing any yet in the Q&A, but we'll give it a second here in case somebody had a direct question around something there.
I will say that the question we got in the past, Brad, was when I mentioned things like chaplains programs and things like that, like, well, how can I do that? There's nothing illegal about caring for people, right? And so you can definitely do those kinds of things. There may be limits on what you want to do and how you would go about that. But at the end of the day, developing a better culture is probably going to involve some form of ethics, and having a basis for that, whether it's scripture or whether it's just humanity 101, it's all generally pretty good.
Yeah, Chaille, to that point, one of our members, Bob Miller from Frank Miller Lumber, sent me a text as he had to leave to attend another program here while you were talking. So he sent me a text basically saying that Bailey Lumber and Frank Miller Lumber both utilize a service called Marketplace Chaplains. So we'll have that. We'll get that information out later to our folks in case anybody was interested in that type of process. It's called Marketplace Chaplains. So with that, Chaille, again, I appreciate you spending time with us today. I think that was very good. And, wish you the best moving forward. Thanks again for helping us out today.
Thank you, Brad. And I wish everyone happy hiring. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, folks, we're about ready to